Hello, and welcome to another episode from the Green Team of the Legendarium. Today we will be covering an author that we have interviewed before, but we haven't covered any of her books specifically yet. So today we're righting that wrong, and we will be covering the Fairy Godmother by none other than the Honorable Mercedes Lackey. And today with me I have Little Red Book
Hello.
and Soulution.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for joining me. How did this episode come about? I think it was
This was it on the 200th episode? I think I got talked into doing an episode for romance if you guys helped me
yes.
pick the book and then we covered it together.
Yes.
We decided that all the guys needed to read more romance because it was an entry drug
Yeah.
for girls.
Yeah. Still,
Um,
drugs are drugs, kids. Be careful.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, today we are talking about the Fairy Godmother. First part of this episode we'll try to keep as spoiler free as possible, and then we'll dive into spoilers. Before we get there, a little bit about Mercedes Lackey in case listeners haven't heard of her for some reason. She's a very prolific fantasy writer. She has written she has published over 140 books. And apparently she writes on average 5.5 books per year.
Wow. I had no idea it was that much.
If you go into any, especially in the US, if you go into any bookstore that carries fantasy fiction, like you will see her on the shelves.
Yeah, I've seen her for years, but I didn't know how many she actually wrote. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
And she is still pumping out books today. Like there's a new book coming out this December. What I did find out was in 2021, she was awarded the Damon Knight Memorial Grandmaster Award. And honestly, I don't know much about that award, but it sounds very prestigious.
Sounds cool.
Yes.
Very cool.
But it is awarded by the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. And it sounds like it's basically like a lifetime achievement award.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it goes to people like Robert Heinlein and, names like that. So
Yeah,
Okay.
Octavia
Other people
Butler.
like Robert Heinlein. Okay.
No, and Octavia Butler.
I'm pretty sure won it. There's been she's one of the few women to have won it.
Good. All right. Well, she's earned it. And she's also really cool. She's in the Discord server and she's constantly got a bunch of stuff that we talk about, and she's hilarious, and I like any conversation I've had with her.
Yeah, she was a lot of fun to interview. She's just a very fun person.
I don't know if she'll listen to this episode, but I hope this doesn't offend her. But it's almost like she's like the grandmother that's adopted us as
I agree.
That would not offend her. I'm sure.
I don't think so either. That's actually the reason you guys picked this book, and I was like, perfect. I've wanted to read a book of hers just because she's so cool in the Discord server.
She'll post things like recommendations for ergonomic chairs,
recipes,
like soup recipes,
good recipes.
She posted a lambus bread recipe earlier today.
Ooh, I missed that. I'm gonna have to check it out.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, if you're not on the Legendarium Discord yet, come on over.
Yeah, we have lambus bread recipes. That's the kind of server we are, in case you guys needed some kind of clue.
Now I feel bad because I've not been on the Discord for like a month and a half.
There's a lot that's been going on. Okay, so back to the book that we're going to be talking about, The Fairy Godmother. So a really quick, just like synopsis. It is a book within a larger series called the 500 Kingdoms series. However, I think you can definitely read this as a standalone book. And from what I've gathered, the other books in the series are more like companion books. So they don't all follow the same main characters, but you'll see characters from other books in the series pop up.
Yes, that is correct.
Cool. So the Fairy Godmother is basically a Cinderella retelling, but a bit more than that, because it has this Fairy Godmother twist. But basically, the main character is Elena Clovis, and it's it's got the standard beats of a Cinderella story where she has the evil stepmother and stepsisters, and they treat her very poorly. She is, left. She is also known as like Ella Cinders by her step siblings. Her father dies, and then things go from there. I won't spoil too much, but in this world of the 500 kingdoms, there's this thing called the tradition, and you find out a lot more about what the tradition is as you read this book. And there you go.
Cool.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say without
Yeah, I would
spoiling
say
too
anything
much.
more would be spoilers. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good gist of the book.
It's Cinderella until it's not Cinderella.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a switching point where it stops being the Cinderella story and becomes something else.
Yeah. Okay. So, diving into our discussion, let's start with just general feelings about the book. No spoilers, but like Soulution. Have you
Yeah.
read anything like this before?
The like so the Cinderella trope, Cinderella like rip. I don't want to say rip off because it's not like that. I mean,
It's like
I've
a
read
retelling.
other. Yeah, it's like a retelling. I've read other books that are retellings of other stories from way, way back. If this field, I don't know, it feels kind of like that. It's fun, but mostly I liked it. It was a fun setting and world with the humor that really shined for me.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting the book to be quite so funny, so that was a nice surprise. Little Red, general feelings about the book?
I was just thinking about the line about pigs flying, and one of
Oh
the
yeah,
little creatures says, "Well, I'm not buying a manure-proof umbrella
manure
anytime
umbrella.
soon."
Yeah,
Right.
just yet, not yet.
So I have not completed all of her books, but I do enjoy her quite a bit. This is my second favorite series of hers. The first being Elemental Mages, which is also fairy tale retellings. I really enjoyed the way that this book played with tropes and kind of turned them on their heads. And I like that the tradition fuels the magic. That's how the magic is created, is the tradition. And it's kind of this force. And I really enjoyed it. This is my third time reading the book.
Nice.
It's just light and it's fluffy and it's fun.
It's definitely like traditional fantasy, but made a bit more modern. This book was like written in, well, at least published in 2004, I think. But like you read the story, the beginning of the story, and you're like, okay, this is like a traditional, like stereotypical kind of fairy tale retelling. And then you start seeing hints of, wait a minute, this is not what I was expecting
Yeah, it
based
branches out.
on, yeah. And
Yeah.
then it just completely goes like this other way. And it was refreshing. I do have some like qualms about a few things, but overall, like it was just really fun, especially after reading Malazan and then getting to read something like
I mean,
this.
This is
isn't
very
anything
different.
fun? Isn't everything
Yeah.
fun after reading
Well,
that?
there are some fun parts in Malazan,
Oh yeah,
but
for sure. Yeah.
this is a totally
But
different
see,
vibe.
here's the thing. I would love to live in this world. Like the 500 kingdoms, like
That's true.
sure. I will go and live in this world and be perfectly happy.
What are you saying you wouldn't want to live in Malazan? Because I
Uh,
would, because apparently, so I would.
no.
That's just awesome. I would
No,
love that.
I do
I mean,
not
it's
want to live.
painful, terrible
No.
world, but so it's great.
That is not true. That is not true. But no, I would not live in Malazan. Given the choice between these two, I would choose 500 Kingdoms for sure.
That's fair.
So I did want to ask, because Solution, you did say that, you've read fairy tale retellings before. How did this compare to other Cinderella retellings that you've experienced?
So this is my first Cinderella retelling, which
Okay.
definitely intrigued me. So the first few pages were really fun to get that, especially because I had not watched Cinderella the movie in at least 15 years.
Hmm.
So maybe when I was like 10, so maybe 20 years. So to get this was fun because it really reminding me. It's like, oh, and that happened, and then we get something similar, and then I was like, oh, and isn't this supposed to happen? And we get something similar. So this was a good way to get me hooked into the story quickly.
Little Red.
I mean, what I like about it is, like I said at the very beginning of the episode, this is Cinderella until it's not. It's Cinderella for like the first 2 or 3 chapters, and then it just goes somewhere completely different. And
yeah,
but at the same time, you get lots of fairy tale references. As far as others, so the one that we've recorded here is Ella Enchanted. It's very different from that, but somehow it still manages to be faithful to the spirit of Cinderella, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think something that Mercedes Lackey did really effectively in the first few chapters is getting the reader to be so sympathetic with Elena and like really feeling that kind of helplessness from Cinderella where it's like she is being mistreated, but she can't really do like she can't break out of that situation. But I think in this version, it's laid out a lot more clearly and logically why she can't just like run away, why she can't like retaliate. I think overall that's like the main difference of this book than a lot of other retellings is how logical it is.
I mean, it goes down to explaining the laws of
Yeah,
the country. It's like,
yeah,
in this kingdom, she has to get married, but she can't get married in order to get out from underneath her guardians, but she can't get married without her guardians'
consent.
permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, because they even she tries to run away at one point, kind of. And
Well, she thinks about it, but then
yeah,
she, like, thinks about the logical conclusion of it, and she's like,
right.
"Oh, well, this is not actually gonna be better." Yeah. Alright, so that's our spoiler-free section, basically, because there's a lot to talk about in the
yep.
spoilers.
So just go
So
read the book, I guess. You know?
It'll
or
take
if you
you
don't care about
a few
spoilers.
hours.
Yeah,
It's not a long book. It's very breezy.
it's a quick read.
Alright, so diving into spoilers, who are your favorite characters? What are your favorite scenes? Little Red?
So, Mother Bella, Fairy Godmother Bella, is one of my favorite characters. She's the one who comes and basically makes Ella an apprentice. And the way she mentors her, and the way the book is structured, you don't see all of the mentoring all at once.
Right.
You see it spaced throughout as she's like facing different lessons. And you get the feeling that she's also a failed. So people who are fairy godmothers and wizards, they are failed traditional stories. Their story didn't work out for whatever reason. You get the feeling she's another Cinderella failure. Her story didn't pan out. I really like Lily. She's one of the brownies.
Mhm.
And even though Alexander is such a horrible person at the beginning of the book, I just love his character arc.
Uh-huh.
And he goes through this period where this little fairy girl gives him the power to see to see see how other people sees him. And so he starts hearing voices of what the brownies are thinking about him when they interact with him. And it really changes him. And I felt like it was a genuine change. And I really enjoyed his story arc. I like Ella too. She's fun. She's like feisty and she's like, I'm not gonna tradition, you're not gonna make me do what you want.
Mhm.
And so yeah.
Nice. Solution?
The brownies. The brownies are my favorite characters.
They're
Anything
great.
to do with the farm, like they remind me of like family, or at
Yeah.
least my family, and just like having fun and just you still gotta work and you still gotta do your stuff, but you can have fun too.
Uh-huh.
They're the best. Love all the brownies. Anything to do with the farm and life lessons and all the learning.
Yeah. We've got Robin and Hob.
Yeah, I know. As soon as that happened, I was like, Robin and Hob? Okay. That's a good little.
Like, is
Did
this a
you ask her,
nod?
Panda, if
I
she
haven't
knows?
asked her.
Oh,
I
that's got to be 100% because then as soon
She
as
would
they introduced
totally answer the
both of those
question.
characters, yeah, she would answer it. But I know for sure it happened because as soon as they introduced both of those characters within like 3 more sentences, they did Robin, comma Hob,
Uh-huh.
and like it was specifically referenced to them. So I knew that was when I was like, for sure she did it on purpose.
And also Robin is the cook and like makes all these delicious food and Robin Hobb is known for her descriptions of food in her
Oh, is she a
books.
food porn person?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Okay. I've
She
bounced off of her books too much. I
she
apologize.
Yeah,
even
me too. Me too.
she even has an Instagram where she would post like
Mm.
about food, or maybe it was like a fan Instagram account of Robin Hobb's foods. Anyway, one of the two.
I either
But
way, it
yes,
sounds like she would get along well with Mercedes.
yeah, I have a suspicion that it's a nod to Robin Hobb. And then there's Lily and Rose. Yeah.
Just going back to the house,
Yeah.
the way that even though they're very together and very family like, they also the way she portrays very realistic conflicts
Uh-huh.
between the different characters within the household. Does that make sense? Like when Rose gets in the argument with the
Randolph.
with Randall the magic mirror.
Also a fun character. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just it feels for a fantasy novel feels very down to earth.
I think that's like the thing that surprised me the most was how realistic a lot of the different parts of the world and story beats were. Just and that's what I kind of mean by logical. Like she
Yeah.
really sometimes a little too much. I think there's a lot of exposition in this book that I would have preferred to be more concise, but I do appreciate the um, realistic portrayal of these characters and settings and situations.
I also really like the evil sorceress
Yeah,
and
who's not actually evil.
Yeah. That's fun too.
and Ella's like not Ella, Elena's
Elena,
like, "Do you want to be the fairy godmother?" She's like, "I would never want to do that. What are you even talking about?"
basically a hell no.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But she has cool dragons that Ella gets to borrow.
hmm Yeah, I think like my favorite characters would be I really like Hob, the way that he basically is Alexander's boss and mentor in a way.
Like the
Mhm.
warden
Um,
almost.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
warden, and
Hmm.
just the way that he also kind of has a little arc with, how he treats Alexander and then accepting him. And just how protective they all are of Elena. The other things I didn't expect, the unicorns. I it's so silly, but it is so funny. Just like, oh, all these unicorns are attracted to Elena because she's a virgin,
Yeah.
and they're himbos basically.
The
Like,
only yeah, they're himbos.
Hmm.
like, may I place my head in your lap, please, please?
You can have all the magic you want.
Yeah. They're a little silly, but they're unicorns, and that's exactly what I expected. It's pretty funny.
Really?
I
Oh,
like it. Well, I've read a couple other books that had a very similar take with
okay.
unicorns, so this was like it was fun to see this again. And I
Mm.
enjoyed this take on unicorns.
Well, I like how she thinks, "Oh, they're so wonderful and beautiful," for, like, the first 2.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Would you get out of the sweet peas? Just stop
Yeah.
Yeah.
eating those
Just
sweet peas."
I
God, I've had
planted the
enough of
lilies
you.
for you. Go eat
Yeah.
the lilies.
"But I like sweet peas." And when they are asked to deliver messages, they always get really confused. They're like, "I know I'm supposed to tell you something."
Oh, yeah. But they don't forget. It just takes them a while to remember.
And we don't get to meet any female unicorns, but apparently they're the same around male virgins.
Right.
There's just
Well,
not as many of them.
not as many male virgins to attract them.
Right, right, right. And at one point, Ella says, "Shouldn't you be mating?" And he's like, "That's not till autumn."
Yeah.
Uh,
Just these little details, like, I
well, and they
sh
sorry.
she has such Mercedes Lackey has such a wild imagination.
Yeah. She's funny.
Well,
The book is just hilarious.
and there's 3 unicorns that participate in the battle at the end.
Mm.
And they wanna become basically mounts, and so they had these other champions,
Yeah,
and they're like, "I don't know how we're gonna keep those 3 boys virgins."
that was very funny. I guess that's the other thing, right? Like, there really isn't a topic in here that she shies away from. Like, sex it's not smut.
No.
I wouldn't put it in
No,
that
definitely not.
category, but it's also not like fade to black kind of thing.
Mhm.
And the way that I did not expect the oral sex. Let me just put it that way. I rarely see that in it described in that way in fantasy books.
I actually really enjoy that. Uh, well, okay, that's
We know what you mean. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
because he's like the reason why that comes up is because he was initiated
Right.
and he was told, "Look, having sex the first time for a girl is painful, so just make sure that she has the good part before she has the painful part." And
Yes.
I love that.
You know, that is something that I never thought I would see on page, like in
Yeah.
a fantasy book.
Yeah, especially.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think I wouldn't have expected a male writer to write something like that, you know?
Definitely not.
And so I really appreciate Mercedes Lackey like making it's not just for shock value, it's not just for entertainment, like there's actually a point.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
it's you know what's going on, but at the same time, it's not like very graphic or anything.
No, this didn't feel like. I mean, I've never read erotica, but I would assume
It's not
it's not
erotica.
like this. So I was like,
No.
this just felt like because I don't really there's not a lot of sex scenes in fantasy books that I read,
Uh-huh.
but occasionally they are closer to this graphic, or maybe sometimes more, but mostly by male authors. So that's why like this was good. This was not too much or anything like that. It wasn't fade to black, like you said.
Yeah.
Again, it's a very like earthy, realistic feeling. Not
Mhm.
like you said, not for shock value. It's not porn.
Mhm.
I also like that Alex and Elena are sharing a dream.
That was interesting.
That was fun. I liked it.
Especially when she realizes, "Oh, it's not just my wait, it's his dream. Oh no, it's our dream."
So I mentioned earlier that I felt like Alexander's redemption was legitimate. Do you guys feel that way too, or is that just me?
No.
Say more.
It's
Um, I d-
you
I
don't buy it?
didn't it didn't feel genuine to me. He was what did I put in my notes? Okay. I didn't enjoy it. He started out absolutely terrible and he wasn't redeemed enough in my eyes to get
Mm.
to where they got in this story. Maybe if like I knew this was like a trilogy or something like that and they took more time and this was mostly just him becoming a decent guy at the end of this book and then he becomes a better person that she would like in the other books, I feel like I'd get into it more, but I didn't
I
like
kind of
that.
agree with you, Solution. So one of the questions I want to ask was, what did you think of the romance? I think that there was so much time spent on the earlier parts of his arc where he is such a terrible person,
Yeah,
that it felt like the turning point and then like him getting redeemed happened a bit too quickly, like in comparison.
I agree. But I didn't want to like put that in the chat or because I feel like I'm biased since these are like my fantasy romance training wheels and I'm doing some of these books, so I don't know if this is standard or what I'm supposed to expect. So I was trying to keep an open mind. I just didn't really enjoy that part of it.
So here's what I would say about that, because I agree as far as the space given to it, to the him becoming a better person. I feel like Mercedes got bored with writing that part because there wasn't enough conflict. And it takes place over like him being redeemed is not the same number of pages as him being a horrible person, when him being a horrible person was like a month and him being redeemed was like 6 months.
It didn't feel like that at all.
But see, it starts in the spring, and then him being fully redeemed is in winter.
Yeah, but I didn't. I mean, I knew that because there's references to it, but I
That's what I'm
just
saying.
didn't like it.
The
Yeah,
book doesn't address it enough. I agree with you guys, but
yeah.
I don't think it's as sudden as it feels in the book. If you look at the time mark,
Page count wise, to me, was
right?
sudden.
Exactly.
Time
Yeah.
wise, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, he spent basically imprisonment doing his training for a certain amount of time. Yeah, he'll slowly get better, like any kid or person would. But then
Right.
we just get the switch, and I'm like, all right, he's decent, I guess, maybe.
No,
And
I
then we're like, oh, I'm in love with him. Like, oh, okay, all right, yeah. Just got to
yeah.
be a decent enough person who's super hot. So that's all it takes. That's all it takes, I guess. I'm like, okay.
No, I'm just saying I agree with you guys as far as the page count. There wasn't enough page count of him slowly getting better, but it clearly takes place over a longer period of time than that first month where he's just a horrible human being.
Yeah. Well,
So,
also, like, this romance, the romance part didn't show up in the book until quite a ways in. I was kind
mhm.
of expecting it to come a lot earlier. So, like,
Yeah.
by page, 150, I was like, "Where's the romance?"
Well,
Cole actually said that too in the
it
DM.
was
He's like, "Where's my romance?"
50% in the book is when we get the POV of the terrible character. And as soon as we did that, I was like, oh, we're halfway through. This is going to obviously be the romance,
Right.
antagonist, protagonist, whatever. And then they made him terrible, and I was like, are we really going to make this guy? So maybe
Uh-huh.
that also like put me off for a little bit too.
I mean, I can think of another romance with a terrible male character.
I mean,
I
Yeah,
did.
enemies
I mean,
enemies to lovers is a common trope in
yeah,
Right.
romance, right?
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know. You guys would
No,
know.
it is. It's a
So
very
okay,
common
that's what I
one.
would assume. I mean, it's in TV shows all the time, so that I do know.
yeah.
Yeah. So, do you think it's fair to say that this isn't actually a romance in the traditional sense of the word? I'm asking Panda. I'm not expecting Soul. Because I could go back and forth on that.
I mean, I would say yes
Yeah.
because it's a significant part of the plot and character development. So basically, the second main character.
Okay, so if you remove the romance element of this, does it impact the story? Yes, it does impact the story because part of Elena's character is that she sees, all these women get paired off with these men, like, men courting them, and even the old widowed gentleman like didn't even think to choose her or look at her as an option. And so that's part
Yeah.
of her kind of baggage.
Yeah. The pimply like farm boy and the cross-eyed
Right.
like waitress or whatever she was. Something like
Yeah.
that.
And so I do think that the romance element um needed to be there for her arc. But that being said, I wouldn't recommend this to somebody who's looking for a more modern fantasy romance. Like the fantasy romances, well, I guess okay. Here's what we're gonna talk about. What words mean. Is this a fantasy romance? Yes. Is it a romantasy? I would say no. Because the emphasis here is on the fantasy and not so much on the romance.
I'd agree
Whereas
with
if
that.
if you're looking
Yeah,
for something that's more emphasis on the romance but set in a fantasy world or setting, right? Then this is not what I would necessarily recommend.
So I would say, I agree with you, Panda. I would say it's closer to Warbreaker than to a Court of Thorns and Roses. Okay, so Court of Thorns and Roses, that's whatever that word you used,
Romantasy.
romantasy.
yeah, good
So
word.
it's very close. It I would say it's romance, but it's closer to a fantasy book with a love story in it
Yeah.
than it is to like what you would think of as romance.
Yeah, because I would say it's not really romance led because her motivation wasn't like, "Oh, I wanna fall in love." Her
No,
motivation was, "I need to teach this dude a lesson."
And also
yeah,
her motivation
vengeance.
is
Yeah,
well, no, not vengeance.
yeah,
It's
it
not
felt like
there's
vengeance. She's like, I gotta teach this son of a gun something because I don't like him.
it's very
Yeah,
school marmy. It's not
yeah.
vengeance.
Yeah,
I mean, when I grounded my child and took away his phone because he was using it in class, was that vengeance or was that just teaching him a lesson? She's very much more the
fair.
school marm. Um, but there are moments that are very much more uh fantasy. Or sorry, very much more romance. Like when she is looking in on Arachne and she sees
Mhm,
her
yeah,
just being in love and she has this voice saying, I can never have that. And she's just sad and she's like, but it's selfish because she just has this inner monologue about it,
right.
which I think is one of the most compelling scenes because never said a favorite scene, but I mean, to me, that was one of the most compelling scenes in the book because here she is, she's 21. She's never not wanted to be in love. And now she finds herself in a position where she thinks she can never have love.
I thought she was like closer to 30. The way like I thought they specifically were like, yeah, many years have basically passed since she became the godmother. So I figured
No.
she'd got at least 4 or 5 years in because it was at least 1 or 2 years.
Well, yeah. She's 20 when she's picked up.
I figured she
probably
was like
24.
mid-20s. Okay.
24 or 25, yeah. But
right.
still, that's a young woman.
I know, I'm just saying. I was just like, I was like, just making sure I had time passage correctly in my mind.
I'm not
Timeline's got to
exactly
be there,
sure.
okay?
I think there's some issues with the timeline. It's a little janky in places where you're like, I don't know. Anyway, so I gotta say this book contains one of my favorite tropes, which is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I love this house so
It's
much.
fun.
I want it. This is why I want to
Dimensional-
live in this world.
Yeah, dimensional magic is always fun.
Yeah. Like, I wish I could have that, and then I could have a library big enough for all my books.
I got book recommendations for both of you afterwards.
Oh no.
Oh, sweet.
Approved by Lady Sweden. She loves this series. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Can't wait. Yeah. I guess anything you would want to say about the romance?
Nope.
Nope, I'm good.
I do like it is a bit of a slow burn. You know, it's not like insta-lovey, which I appreciate. I mean, sometimes insta-love works, but in this case, like, because the romance was not really like the central part, it's really more the character development and like each character doing the growth. I did appreciate the slower burn for the romance. Unlike the what was it, Arachne and the Poet Prince, which that one was like
It was
instant.
so fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, but it doesn't matter. It was just fun.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, because Bella's like, and I'm probably she has some of his books in her library.
Okay, let's talk about writing style. Okay, so any thoughts, positive, negative, neutral, about the writing style? Soulution?
I love her comedy and her side characters. It
Mhm.
was just the way, like you said, realistic depictions of friendship and camaraderie and just flow of conversation is really well.
Mm.
And then I have something else to say afterwards, but I'll let you guys get something in. Go ahead.
Okay, well read.
I actually don't have a lot to say about the style.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of weird for me because I usually do. You know, she's just an author I go to when I want something comfortable.
It is pretty cozy, like especially the
It does.
descriptions
Yeah.
of like the farm and the cottage and going to the orchard and gathering apples and all the foods that they eat. Like, it is a bit cottage core vibes there. For me, like, a lot of the writing style did work, but as I mentioned before, I think it could have been more concise. So, like, there were quite a few times where I was like, okay, this explanation is just going on for a little bit too long. Like, explanation of the tradition, explanation of like, because this book is pretty meta, right? Like, there's a lot of references to other fairy tales and folklore stories. You see like Princess and the Pea, Sleeping Beauty, all these other Rapunzel, ladder locks, which I had never heard that term before.
It's Rapunzel, but yeah.
And there's definitely like quite a few Easter eggs in there. Like, if you really know your fairy tales, you could pick up on a lot and probably make it a bit more enjoyable. I think. But there were parts where it's just like, I get the point. Like, can we move on now? You know? So that's when I would start skimming.
Yeah.
You know
I
what's
hated
so
the
funny?
tradition. That's what was my thing, is that
love
I
the tradition
absolutely
so
hated
much.
the
I just
tradition
love it.
because every time they're like, "Oh, we have to follow the tradition because it's a tradition," unless we don't follow the tradition, because that's always a possibility that happens sometimes. So then they're like, "All right, we're going to do all these things that's by the tradition." I'm like, "Yeah, but we know that's not going to happen because you just said like 100 pages ago that like doesn't always have to follow the tradition. We could make a new tradition." So I'm like, "So what are we doing? What are we doing here?"
The whole book is about making a new tradition. That's
Yeah,
what
the whole book is about trying to fool you, and I'm like, "You can't fool me." And they're like, "I'm gonna fool you. I'm gonna fool you. You're gonna think it's the tradition." I'm like, "No, I'm not. Don't do it. Don't you do it." And then they're like, "Oh, I gotcha. It's
I
actually
don't
a
think I
tradition."
agree.
I'm like, "I know what you were doing the whole time."
Disagree. That is
I
not how I
hated
read
it.
this book at all. That is not. I read it as the whole thing is a joke about fairy tales. Like, that's what it
I
is.
like that part because, like you said, it was
And
meta.
the
There's lots of other fairy tales, but they shouldn't have taken it as seriously as they did, as if they
I
had
don't think they take
never.
it seriously. So
They praise her for her ingenuity and her creative thinking for making the
importing the
tradition work for
tradition.
her,
Yeah.
but yet they're all like so afraid of the tradition when all it takes is like someone to take literally 2 minutes of brainstorming for any problem to be like, why don't we make it fit this tradition instead? And it's just like there's so many avenues and roads that it didn't work for me. I
Okay.
mean, I like the concept. The concept was cool. It's like Wheel of Time Tavern on steroids, but
It's not, though.
yeah, okay,
It's not because so the thing is that, at least for me, the way I read it is life falls into certain patterns. This is super meta. Life falls
like the
into certain
movie. What?
No, life falls into certain patterns. Like,
Okay,
life in general out there, all of our lives, they fall into certain patterns that you can relate to. But also, you can break out of that for your own life, the whatever pattern that you live in.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, I get it. I got it when they were basically
I don't
making the
know. I
pregnant
loved
lady
it.
be like, "Oh,
I'm
the
sorry.
the, the husband has to do this," and he's like, "But does he? You're giving him a ton
So
of different options." Like it's I don't know. I just
I think
I
that the point of the tradition is that because this is also quite meta, right? Like
Mhm.
when you go into a fairy tale retelling, like there are certain beats that you're expecting. And that's
Right.
also like readers' expectations, right?
Mhm.
This is why we love these stories because there are certain beats. But
Mhm.
then what Lackey does is she does spin them on their head where it's like, but it doesn't have to happen this way. Here are other options. It's just that it is hard to um deviate from what the tradition wants in and you have to like satisfy certain criteria so that you're not changing the story so much that it no longer is that story,
Yeah.
you
Like the
know?
free will of that husband was non-existent. He had to do like one of the three options that the people meddling in his life are providing because the tradition demands it.
Are
Right.
you talking which husband? Are you talking
The
about
husband that has to go steal some
Oh,
berries or something
well, he's just
for
a
his
dummy.
wife.
He's
Yeah,
just a
but
big
he's
dummy.
that's someone that all right, look, it's not that I'm saying I'm connected to a dummy, all right? But this guy had no free will. Like and it's just all this stuff and that was the breaking point for me with the tradition was that they were like forcing this person, but yet they can also twist other things and I just didn't like that.
The re
And it
so
yeah, I've
so
said my
what
piece on it, that's all.
well,
You
what
can
I was
keep
gonna
going. It's
say
fine. I don't really have
what I was
anything
gonna
else
say
to
is the
say to it.
reason why
Yeah.
he doesn't appear to have free will is because and think about this in your own life. Sometimes you feel like things are out of control. Well, things are kinda out of control when the tradition hits you, and he doesn't have the will to fight back because he's just not very smart.
And he doesn't have magic. Like he's
Right.
Yeah, he
not.
doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
And I think part of it is like with Elena, she why she is more different from a lot of the other like wizard folks and magical folks is that she is actively taking the harder route of working using the tradition against itself. And that takes a lot more creativity. Whereas it's a lot easier to just go with the beats and go with the flow. Although that being said, like the whole point of the godmothers, right, is supposed to be like making sure the good stuff happens and preventing the bad stuff. Or like if the bad stuff is supposed to happen, right, making it so that it's not so bad, like there is a good ending. And so I think the tradition is basically one of those things where Lackey gets into like the nitty-gritty details of how it works and sometimes there can be contradictions and that's kind of just like the risk of explaining your magic system
Yeah.
a lot more, but you still wanting certain
Yep.
things to play out in a
When
certain
your
way.
magic system is tropes and plots, it's going to get a little convoluted. All right. I mean, I understand that. And I actually like the concept of it. I
Yeah.
just did not like the execution near the end. That's all.
Mm.
and that's fair. I'm not trying to say you're a bad person. I'm just saying that
You heard it
this
here.
book
She called me a dummy and a bad
I
person
did
all
not
in one
call you a
episode.
dummy. I called the husband a dummy. No, but I just love all the Easter eggs, the things
Yeah.
about giants being shepherds, the thing with
Yeah, I like the Giants. The Giants were cool.
the cat at the end of the story
Hmm.
who leads her to the heart.
Yeah.
And she calls it like daughter of Bast and wisest
Yes.
one and all that kind
Yes.
of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And
Gotta
That's
feed
good.
its ego.
it just hits like all my story erogenous zones.
Hmm.
And not in the romance way.
Hmm.
But I get why
Checks
I
all
get
your boxes.
it does. It 100% does. I love it.
Yeah.
But I understand why someone would not like it. I really do.
Yeah, I think that's one of the areas where, like, if she explained less, maybe it'll work better.
What's so funny is I'm on a podcast called Wordless, and I'm like, give me all the words in this story. All of them.
Okay, so this next question, we could probably have already covered some of it, but if there's anything new you want to say, anything you would have changed in the story?
Yeah, I've said my piece on that. I'm okay.
Okay.
What would I say that I would change? Because I don't think I have said anything. I would I would say I would like to see their friendship play out better. Those 6 or 7 months. Yeah,
Alexander
Alexander and Elena.
Elena, yeah.
I would have liked to see that. I would also have liked to see Elena go back and visit her hometown. It's implied that she might have at some point, but
Didn't she do that?
She did
No.
that. That was in the epilogue. She didn't like.
No, she's not.
She set
not
up
on the page.
She set it up though. She set up
She
the
did.
epilogue herself.
I would like to actually
basically.
see her go back and visit her next door neighbors and talk to them.
But Mercedes
like
didn't want you
Fleur.
to see that.
I know, but
That's
I don't
why
care.
she
That's
didn't
what I
write it
wanted.
in there.
I see.
Because
I'm
that
just
would
saying
be a
that's
part of the tradition.
How would it not be when you go back?
The
and
hero returns. Yeah, that's part of the tradition.
But it doesn't actually happen in the book, and I want it in the book.
Right. She did exactly what you wanted, which is not give you the tradition you wanted. The godmother's orders. That's what it was.
Look, something I wanted to change. Okay, so we all know what you wanted to change.
Would it be anything I want to change? I mean, other than the conciseness, I think overall there was just, you know what? More descriptions of foods.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like that. And then also maybe just like another 30 pages of mentoring with the OG godmother before she disappears. Just like a little bit more. I really like that section.
I
Just a little
like
bit
that
more.
section too.
Well,
Yeah.
I agree too. That would have been good. The one thing that Lackey does is have it show up later, like things she's remembering back, like the carrot and the
Yeah,
stick
things
line.
that reference,
Yeah,
yeah,
she's like,
the training.
the kings need to know that just magic, if they piss off the wrong person, is going to destroy their kingship, and the
Yeah.
peasants need to know that if they do the right thing, maybe they'll become a prince. I like that part, like things like nuggets like that.
Okay, I guess see, this is like contradictory. Parts of it I wanted to be longer, and parts of it I wanted to be a lot shorter, and parts of it I'm like, well, that took a turn. So like the whole demon like invading like Julian's kingdom and like, you know, killing the king, and then Elena and Alexander had to go save them. When I hit that point in the story, I was like, wait, this is still going. The story is still going.
Yeah.
And I understand why it was included, but I kind of wish it was done differently. I think that maybe that was the whole thing where it was like, okay, I got to wrap this up. So boom, 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 here's this and that. And it's just like trying to squeeze a lot into the end to make the redemption like complete, and like giving Alexander the path of the champion. Yeah, when I got to that point, I was kind of ready to be done.
The way I think it would have worked better is if that section was a direct sequel to this book. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So, like, he gets his power up, but I think Mercedes already has in her mind that she's not going to do a Alexander book. So we have to show his power up and work, at work. So
I see.
smash that into the end of the book.
Yeah,
But if there had been a direct sequel, then it could have gotten its own.
like more fleshed out.
Right, exactly. That's what I
Yeah.
think it is. I could be
Yeah,
wrong.
like he could be working on, learning how to use his power and all of that. And then the climax is like, oh, there is this danger. Your brother is in trouble. And then ultimately, like, because like the wedding, all of that just like happened so quickly, I agree with you. I think like if she did split that off into its own book, then she could have fleshed that whole relationship out more.
Right.
Okay. Any last thoughts before we start to wrap up here?
Just this is a really fun book. It's got problems, but it's fun, and I love it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. The brownies are worth reading for the book alone. Yeah.
I love the brownie so much.
By the
Yeah.
way, that's why Girl Scouts, the littlest Girl Scouts, are called brownies.
No, it's
Really?
not.
Yes, it is because you're supposed to be a little helper in your house.
Oh, I thought you meant from
Ah.
this book, but okay.
No.
I was like,
Brownies are a
Brownies as
thing.
a
I called brownie
concept.
on that one. Yeah.
No, there are real brownies. I mean,
Well,
there
I
aren't
know
real
there's
brownies.
brownies. I eat them all the time, just not the ones in this book.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be a little house elf, and that's
Okay.
why
I see,
they're
I see. Huh.
Well, I'm not gonna call you out on it in this episode. If I do, I'll Google it and I'll come back to you afterwards.
I'm pretty sure she's right. But who would you recommend this book to?
I would recommend this book to anybody who's interested in a Cinderella book that has some good comedy and it's
Cinderella,
short.
Cinderella.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun little book. It's good.
Hello, Red.
Well, I recommended it to you guys. I'm pretty sure I'm the one who picked out
Yeah,
the book.
you did your recommendation.
Yeah. No, I would recommend it to people who like cozy fantasy and like fairy tales and are like big fans of fairy tales. If you like fairy tales, you will like this story.
I agree. I completely agree. Do you think Kieran would like this?
Yes.
Yep, because it goes meta, so he'll forgive any flaws.
Did
All
you
right.
actually like it, Soul?
I thought it was all right. I
What would
really
you
love the
rate it?
comedy. What I really want, I want to know because if you read a lot of her books, is anything with the least amount of romance in it, I will read that series in a heartbeat. I just felt like between the romance and I just think like the tradition part didn't hit for me. So if there's another series in a different world, I would definitely because I love her side characters. I loved just the conversation and flow in her comedy. So I like her writing. I just didn't like a couple of the choices she made in this book, essentially.
Okay. Because she has this big series called the Veldemar series
Okay.
that it's going to be the next one I would read by her. I
Hmm.
was going to start with Arrows of the Queen and then Arrows Flight, Arrows Fall. That's like the initial trilogy that starts off the series, I believe.
Yeah.
So we could give that a try.
All right.
I would recommend to you Standalone in That World. And it takes a thief or something along
Take a
those lines.
Thief.
Take a thief.
Take a thief.
Yeah, because
Okay.
it
Take a
is a
thief to know a thief.
it's a standalone. It's not meta. It's nothing
Okay.
like that. It's
All
completely
right.
sincere. And I'm pretty sure there may be a love story, but it's not a romance.
No, I'm fine. I even didn't mind this one. I just didn't like how quick because this is a short book. All right. And when you get 50% through and we're finally meeting the guy, that's all. I think honestly, I probably would like her other stuff with that too.
I would also recommend at least giving a try to her Elemental Mages series because those are much more straightforward retellings of fairy tales.
Okay.
As opposed to this, which is some kind of comment on fairy tales.
Which was still fun. I liked it.
I know you say it's a short book, but at the same time, like parts of it did feel short and then other parts didn't. It is like in the mass market paperback, it's like over 400 pages.
Really? I'm
Yeah.
I borrowed it from the library and it didn't even go to my Kindle. So I was reading this either on my computer at
Really?
home. So I was like, and every time I did it, it was always like it said it was like around 300 pages, maybe a little less, a little more. So I was like, it's gotta be
It's almost
smaller.
500 pages in the mass
Oh,
market paperback.
But the
okay.
mass market, you got to understand, is like this big
Yes.
and it's like super
Yeah.
thick as opposed to like the hardback is probably 300.
Hmm.
It's actually over 400 too.
Is it
It's like
really?
410. Yeah.
Okay.
I read the hardcover.
Because I don't know, when I was on Goodreads, this is what I was using. One of them said it was like 270 pages, and the other one said like 315. I was like, it's got to be around 300 then.
Yeah.
It
I,
is.
Or I was looking at a different book and I mixed up my numbers, which I do all the time.
So if you're playing it at normal speed, it is 13 hours long.
Mm.
so
All right,
it's not that short of a book.
okay.
It feels short though in a lot
So
of
I
places.
remove
But
all
I
my
agree with you.
comments about shortness and just stick with the comedy and the Cinderella story.
But I think parts of it does read really quickly,
I
right?
read the
Like
book, yeah, exactly. It felt like I
so
was reading, I know my normal reading speed. It did feel like
mhm.
I was reading more than what it showed on it.
Yeah, so readability wise, like it reads pretty quick. Anything else? If not, we can wrap up.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you, Little Red and Soulution, for joining me on this episode to talk about The Fairy Godmother by Mercedes Lackey. And if you want to hear more from Mercedes Lackey herself, check out the interview episode that the Green Team did with her. Link will be in the show notes, and or join the Discord. Maybe you can converse with her yourself.
She'll be there. She's cool.
She might have a cat still that she needs to have adopted out.
Something, yeah, or some
You
cool
never know.
recipe. Hopefully.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone. Until next time.
See
Bye.
ya.